Welcome to the Weekly Dose, a Pharmacy Times broadcast bringing you the latest clinical updates, regulatory decisions, and expert insights shaping the pharmacy profession. I'm Danielle Valletti, and today I'm joined by Kennedy Ferruggia. Each week, we break down the top stories impacting pharmacists across specialties, from clinical practice and emerging therapies to regulatory updates and patient care. Let's begin with this week's top story.
In our top story this week, the White House has announced a significant expansion of the TrumpRx.gov platform, now featuring more than 600 generic medications. The expansion integrates real-time cash price data from private partners, including Amazon Pharmacy, Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drugs, and GoodRx, to help consumers bypass traditional insurance copays and PBM-managed pricing. The updated list focuses on high-volume generics for chronic conditions such as atorvastatin, lisinopril, and metformin, many of which are now listed for under $5. However, the platform maintains important limitations. It does not include controlled substances or medications requiring FDA-mandated risk evaluation and mitigation strategies, also known as REMS. For pharmacists, this signals a growing federal push towards a middleman-free drug purchasing model. It creates a dynamic where patients are increasingly incentivized to opt out of their insurance benefits if a lower cash price is available elsewhere, changing how pharmacists must navigate patient access. As public anxiety over medication costs remain at a record high, pharmacists will likely face more questions about these cash pay programs. Success in this evolving landscape will require pharmacists to be prepared to help patients weigh the convenience and potential savings of these direct-to-consumer channels against the benefits of their established local pharmacy relationships. Turning now to this week's KOL feature: why hepatitis B remains a critical public health challenge and where pharmacists fit in. Pharmacy Times spoke with Spencer Durham, PharmD, about the persistent gaps in adult hepatitis B vaccination despite universal recommendations from the CDC. Durham highlighted that hepatitis B can affect anyone, regardless of perceived risk factors. He emphasized that pharmacists are uniquely positioned to break down barriers, not just by screening patients, but by actively addressing vaccine hesitancy and insurance hurdles that often lead to missed opportunities for protection. A key part of that conversation is the shift towards a 2-dose vaccine series, such as Heplisav-B. Durham noted that by replacing traditional 3-dose regimens with a 2-dose option, pharmacists can significantly improve series completion rates, which is a major advantage for adult populations where adherence can be challenging. For pharmacists, the call to action is clear. Move beyond traditional risk stratification. By operationalizing vaccination during routine patient encounters, pharmacists can close immunization gaps and reduce the long-term risk of chronic infection and liver cancer. And as we see continued public health efforts to improve vaccine access, the pharmacist's role as a clinical educator and vaccinator has never been more critical to protecting adult patient populations.
Turning now to policy news, and this week brought several major FDA approvals across immunology, oncology, and cardiovascular care. The FDA has approved Immgolis and Immgolis Intri as the first biosimilars to the golimumab reference products Simponi and Simponi Aria. The approvals expand treatment options for adults with moderately to severely active rheumatoid arthritis and ulcerative colitis. Immgolis is administered as a subcutaneous injection, while Immgolis Intri is given as an intravenous infusion. The FDA determined there were no meaningful clinical differences between the biosimilars and their reference products in terms of safety, efficacy, or immunogenicity. Both products were also designated as interchangeable biosimilars, meaning pharmacies may dispense them in place of the reference products where permitted under state law. For pharmacists, the approvals could help expand access to lower-cost biologic options for patients with chronic autoimmune conditions. The FDA has also expanded the approval of T-DXd with 2 new indications in HER2-positive early breast cancer. The new indications include use in both the neoadjuvant and adjuvant settings for patients with high-risk early-stage disease. The approvals were supported by results from the Phase 3 DESTINY-Breast11 and DESTINY-Breast05 trials. In DESTINY-Breast11, T-DXd demonstrated a significantly higher pathological complete response rate compared with standard therapy. Meanwhile, DESTINY-Breast05 showed superior invasive disease-free survival compared with ado-trastuzumab emtansine in patients with residual invasive disease after neoadjuvant therapy. Shanu Modi, MD, said in a news release, quote, "These two new indications in HER2-positive early breast cancer will evolve how we treat patients in these settings." For oncology pharmacists, the expanded use of T-DXd in earlier lines of therapy highlights the continued growth of antibody-drug conjugates in curative intent breast cancer care. And finally, the FDA has approved baxdrostat as the first aldosterone synthase inhibitor for the treatment of hypertension in adults who remain uncontrolled on existing medications. Baxdrostat works by selectively blocking aldosterone production, targeting a key driver of persistently elevated blood pressure without impacting cortisol levels. In the Phase 3 Baxton trial, patients experienced significant reductions in systolic blood pressure compared with placebo. Craig Beaver's PharmD told Pharmacy Times, quote, "This FDA approval is a big win for patients with treatment-resistant hypertension." For pharmacists, the approval represents a new option for patients who continue to struggle with blood pressure control despite multiple therapies. Pharmacists will also play a key role in monitoring for hyperkalemia, counseling patients on adherence, and helping identify appropriate candidates for this first-in-class agent. Pharmacists continue to play a central role in interpreting these developments, supporting patient education, and helping navigate an increasingly complex therapeutic environment. You can read more about today's stories on pharmacytimes.com and be sure to follow us on social media at @PharmacyTimes. For Pharmacy Times, I'm Danielle Valletti.
And I'm Kennedy Ferruggia. Thank you for watching this episode of The Weekly Dose. We'll see you next week.